Alright everybody, so you might have seen the headlines already and seen that Apple plans to fully support RCS messaging, which is the rich communication services type of messaging that Android users actually use, so Android users can now rejoice come 2024. So in this video, I want to talk about exactly what that means, what the differences are going to be for both iPhone and non-iPhone users. Are you going to kind of see it on a day-to-day basis? Let's get right into it and leave some comments down below about what you think is going to happen now that RCS is coming and being supported by iPhones. So before we really get started, I do want to break down exactly what the differences were before this new change. And again, this isn't going to take into effect until 2024, they said, and we don't really know what time in 2024. It could be January 1st, it could be December 31st for all we know. But what's funny about this is that this is actually coming out less than 48 hours after Carl Pay from Nothing comes out with their new innovative service, which allows Android users to get the blue bubble and be able to iMessage directly to iPhone users. So that, unfortunately, doesn't really matter at this point anymore. Obviously, the Phone 2 is still going to be able to do that. I was kind of excited because I am a Nothing Phone 2 actually owner, and I wanted to test that out. But now it seems like Apple, to kind of combat that, is now saying that they're going to fully support RCS messaging. And before we get into the weeds of everything, I do want to just kind of break it down in terms of how you would explain this at the family dinner table at Thanksgiving for people that don't really know or care about the technicalities of it. And what it basically means is that now if you're an Android user, you're going to get all the features of iMessage users or iPhone users. So you'll be able to double tap to like a message, be able to get full multimedia messages. You don't no longer going to have those like blurry small videos that show up if you are receiving, a photo or a video from an Android user. And then also you will be able to be part of actual group messaging chats and not actually get a watered down version of what iMessage already provides, ideally in a perfect world. Now, I'm sure there'll be some differences and some nuance, but at the end of the day, it basically means that now Android and iPhone messaging now play nice together. So now I do want to get into the nuance a little bit about what this means exactly, and we've heard about this battle for years, right? People on the Android side have always been saying that Apple has been keeping everything in a silo on purpose and making the messaging kind of experience worse on purpose between Android users and iPhone users to kind of keep their walled garden up as high as possible, as to make sure that people don't leave iMessage and go and leave the iPhone and the Apple ecosystem. And for the most part, it's probably one of the top 3, maybe top 2 services that Apple has with their iPhone and Apple ecosystem that keeps people in the walled garden. I would say iMessage, and then things like AirDrop, and then just the whole continuity aspect, being able to copy something from your iPhone and then paste it into your Mac and vice versa, and things along those lines. But iMessage was definitely up there, especially for here in America, where I believe it was 83 or 87% of teenagers own iPhones, which is absolutely absurd. So if you go into a high school, 8 or 9 out of 10 of kids are going to have an iPhone, where 1 is only going to have an Android phone. And we've seen that escalate all the way to bullying and things like that, where like people get excluded because they have Android phones. People aren't going on dates because they have Android phones versus an iPhone. But hopefully this does fix things, but let's get into the nuance a little bit and talk about exactly what this means. So the current state of the messaging between Android and iPhone is kind of broken right now because the experience isn't that great overall, right? You still kind of rely on the old SMS and MMS protocol when going between Android and iPhone, which is where MMS stands for short messaging service, which has been around for, I want to say 2-3 decades now at this point. And then MMS was kind of the evolution of that, which was the multimedia messaging services, which allowed you to send more than just text. But that, again, is a very old protocol. So whenever somebody does send a video or a photo and they send it over to an iPhone, then it's going to be very broken and it's going to be very pixelated. And it's not going to be the full quality because this is not meant to carry that much data at the end of the day. And then as iMessage has evolved, like if you wanted to double tap to like a actual message or kind of reply in a thread, if there was an Android user in that thread or an Android user that was trying to see that their message was liked, you would see it kind of in quotations that it would say like your message, that said, "Hi, what's up?" was liked by Fernando Silva or something along those lines. So again, it was a very broken experience. So then what Google wanted to do was push this RCS. So RCS stands for Rich Communication Systems or Services. And basically what that means is that it allows you to have that type of protocol. So being able to double tap, being able to send full resolution multimedia messages, being able to send voice memos and things along those lines. And across the Android ecosystem, which I know there's a lot of different hardware aspects, but for Android, it works perfectly. It works exactly like iMessage does on the iPhone. But when you brought those two together, it was still a very broken situation. So ideally now what this RCS support by Apple means is that we will be able to now double tap to like these messages and have, a better experience when sending multimedia messages like like voice memos and videos and photos, and it'll be a much less broken experience, which ideally will just make it a much smoother experience overall for everybody involved, and there's no longer going to be this watered down version between iOS and Android. So we did have an Apple spokesperson speak to our very own Chance Miller, who's our editor-in-chief, and they said that later next year we will be adding support for RCS Universal Profile, which is a standard as currently published by GSM Association. So we believe that RCS Universal Profile will offer a better interoperability experience when compared to SMS or MMS, and this will work alongside iMessage, so it's not going to replace iMessage, it's going to work alongside it, and it will continue to be the best and most secure messaging experience for Apple users. So again, iMessage isn't going anywhere. That encryption, that security, that kind of how easy and fluid it's going to be between iPhone users and iPad users and Mac users, it's all going to be there. It's all going to be exactly the same. It's just that now if an Android user steps into that kind of realm or into that thread, it's not going to be a broken experience for any user at that point, because even for the iPhone user, when they message an Android user, at least right now, it's still kind of like a deterrent. Like, it's not something that you would want to do just because Apple makes it so bogged down and so annoying to actually get that done, which is an unfortunate situation. But one of the big things about RCS compared to SMS and MMS is actual SMS and MMS relied on data. So it relied on an actual cell phone signal to actually relay those messages. Where iMessage was one of those messaging systems that actually relied on internet data. So you can be on your Wi-Fi, you don't have to rely on actually having signal and cell phone services send out an actual text message or an iMessage. And now RCS relies on that same protocol. So you do not need to have actual service. You can be on Wi-Fi and still get a perfect connection to send out that RCS message. And again, like I mentioned earlier, that's going to bring a lot of iMessage style features to the cross-platform messaging system, so between iPhones and Android devices. So this includes things like read receipts, like I mentioned earlier, typing indicators, so those 3 dots that come up when somebody is typing, those high quality images that I mentioned a couple times, videos, and then also the ability to share your location as well. So the fact that it relies on actual internet as opposed to cell phone signal is a big difference between these two messaging protocols. So as I mentioned, iMessage isn't going anywhere, and Apple still states that iMessage between iPhone users is still going to be the most encrypted and most secure way to communicate via kind of text message or iMessage. It just means that RCS is now going to be adopted and supported, and they are going to work with GSMA to kind of make it even more secure overall, because Apple owns the iMessage ecosystem. They own that kind of end-to-end experience, so they're able to encrypt that very securely, versus RCS is a little bit more of an open source, open world, so being able to secure that down is going to be very important to Apple to make sure iPhone users don't have a different experience overall when it comes to security especially. And then one final thing that we do want to mention is people were wondering, how is it going to work? Are the green bubbles going to be gone? Are they going to be a different color? Is RCS messaging now going to adopt the blue bubble? It looks like Apple's keeping it segregated, right? So blue bubble means an iPhone and green bubble means that it's coming from an Android device. So let's see exactly what that means. I'm curious to see how it's going to work with multiple group chats, or at least with a group chat that has multiple Android users and multiple iPhone users. What color those bubbles going to be? Is the experience going to be kind of one-to-one between iMessages between iPhones or iMessaging between Android phones? Again, on paper, it should be one-to-one. It should be a very similar experience and very iMessage-like, but I'm very curious to see what that actual experience is going to be like once we do get our hands on it and we're able to message Android users as if they're using iMessage. And then I also want to know how it's going to work between maybe on macOS, iPadOS, and iOS. Because right now, yes, you can receive text messages onto your Mac and text messages onto your iPad if you turn that feature on, but they can't really reply and send photos. It's kind of, again, it's a very broken system right now because it sort of relies on Wi-Fi, and then it pings your iPhone, and then from your iPhone it gets it sent out to that Android user. So let's see how these actual macOS and iPadOS devices also adopt RCS, and if that's going to be an interesting experience or the similar experience of just texting from your iPhone to an Android phone. But let me know in the comment down below what you think about this situation. Are you happy that Apple's kind of opening up the reins finally of this walled garden a little bit? Because again, Samsung and Google and other Android companies have been battling, and kind of, you've even seen marketing campaigns from Google side to open up RCS, saying like, hey, don't exclude us from iMessage, or don't exclude us from Android users and iPhone users, because we all just want to be messaging together, which makes sense. Like, it shouldn't be a situation where like, because I have an Android, I don't want to text you, right? It should be all easy to do. The experience should be kind of uniform and universal, in my opinion. Yes, we live in a capitalistic society, so being able to kind of create a product that's going to keep people wanting to use it more and more on your side, I get it for sure. But again, text messaging is a pretty commoditized thing. Like, it should be open to everybody at the end of the day, in my opinion, because it is just a way to communicate. But that is my personal 2 cents. I'm a big fan of this opening up. I'm just curious to see how it's going to be implemented over time and when exactly it's going to come out. Leave a comment down below about what you think. Is it something that you want? Is it something you're going to notice? I know we're on a 9 to 5 Mac channel, so a lot of our users are, iPhone users and iMessage users, so maybe this isn't going to mess up with your day-to-day, or it's not even going to cross your day-to-day, but that's basically what it means. At the end of the day, iMessage and Android phones are not going to be able to play a little bit nicer, and it should be a much better experience overall. But that's going to do it, everybody. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know that you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch some more iOS, macOS, or iPadOS videos, click on one of these right here. We got some actual gift guides coming out here real soon for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so definitely stay subscribed, and I'm excited to see exactly what's going on here with RCS and Apple. Peace, everybody.